Hi guys, thanks for tuning in. So finally we are comparing the red Komodo against the ZCam E2F6, dynamic range, color science, and which one is the better cinema camera. You're gonna find out in this video. Coming up. Hi guys, my name is Paul, I'm a German filmmaker and this channel is all about filmmaking, gear reviews, but also DaVinci Resolve tutorials. So if you're interested in that, please consider subscribe, I would really appreciate that. Please also note that on my channel I have also plenty other videos about lighting techniques, composition, so everything basically which is related to filmmaking you're gonna find on my channel. So if that's something that's interesting for you, I really appreciate your support. So as I've said, in this video we are talking about the red Komodo and the ZCam E2F6. Both cameras I own by myself and I've used them like several months now, and I've also used them on professional sets. And yeah, in this video I'm gonna share my thoughts with you, which camera is better, if one camera is really better than the other, how's the image quality, dynamic range, and so many more. Let's go. So first of all, let's talk about the build quality and overall design. So I really like that both cameras are designed in this cube shape body, which is really nice, and both are made out of aluminum, which make them really high quality. And also both cameras are built like tanks. And also that gives you like the option, like the cube design, that you can rig the camera out to be big with a monitor, a side handle and something like that. But you can always go really small if you need to, and really lightweight, which is really appreciated in certain situations. Both cameras are recording on a single CFast card, which you can find on both cameras on the left side here. And also, since we are already talking about physics and outside, both cameras are using batteries of course. On the ZCam we use like the Sony NPF batteries, which you can find in various different sizes, and yeah, they're really cheap and everywhere to find. The Komodo uses two Canon BP batteries, but you can also use only one, so meaning that this is hot swappable, so if one is empty you can swap that out, the camera will run or continues to run on the other batteries. So basically you can record any day long if you have enough battery juice. In terms of overall runtime, I think the ZCam is a little bit better when it comes to power consumption, at least if you're using like the big Sony NPF batteries. But also here with two 970 batteries, you're looking at around 2.5 to 3 hours runtime, which is really great. So if you are outside shooting, changing settings quickly is really important. So therefore menu is also a big point here. So both cameras have a really nice menu, which everything is easy laid out and easy to find, I think. However, on the ZCam something are a little bit harder to find and they don't make sense. For example, you can change the record settings in one page, and in the other is like video, where you can change the codec. That doesn't really make sense for me. I would have preferred to have it just in one category. But anyway, I think the Komodo is much more intuitive. But what I really like about both cameras, which is really great, that you can both control via an app, via Wi-Fi, and you can also monitor, live view the camera, and you can change any settings. That is really great, and with little to no latency. So you can leave your monitor at home if you're outside with your girlfriend or on vacation, something like that, and just can use your phone, which is really great. Also on cinema cameras, the codec is really important. So glad that both cameras record internally in ProRes 422. That's really important, because when you're giving it out to clients or you're working for an agency and they want to have the footage, they always mostly request Apple ProRes. So you can just record it internally, no need to transcode the footage. Both cameras can also record RAW internally. Here on the Komodo we have the famous R3D red code RAW, which is one of the most powerful red codecs out there. So that feature alone is a really great feature of the Komodo. On the Z-Cam we have Z-RAW, which is not supported by all NLEs currently, only by Premiere you have a plugin, so for Resolve it doesn't work, unfortunately. You can also record ProRes RAW externally, which I think isn't that great. But so therefore I think the Red Komodo is better. But also on the Z-Cam you have like H.265 and 420 10-bit and H.264. So if you have like smaller gigs, you can use that one to save on file sizes here. So that's great that Z-Cam has implemented that. So now let's talk about the sensor. The Red Komodo features a Super 35 global shutter 6K sensor. So and Super 35 is meaning it has a 1.3x crop, a little bit wider than traditional Super 35, which is more like 1.5x crop. The F6 on the other hand features a full frame 6K rolling shutter. So rolling shutter versus global shutter. So global shutter means the camera exposes the frame at once, whereas on a rolling shutter it reads the sensor line by line. And it can happen if you pan from left to right and the camera has a slow readout time, that objects appear banded that are actually straight. Because of the different lines, and that basically cannot happen on a global shutter. So therefore global shutter is really great for sports, run and gun, everything which is fast pacing, really great. But anyway, the rolling shutter performance on the Z-Cam isn't bad at all. So for example, my Blackmagic Pocket 6K was way worse than that. So and also the Red Komodo features a Canon RF mount, which basically allows you to adapt anything to it because of the short flange distance, or PL whatsoever, EF glass, you can use all that. And also Canon has a speed booster, which I also have, an RF speed booster, which basically makes this camera a little bit wider than full frame, which is pretty crazy. So really great. And also the Z-Cam has a locking EF mount per default, but it has an interchangeable lens mount, so you can use any lens mount that you want to. You can just buy it and swap it out yourself with just 4 screws. So really great options on both of these cameras. And since we are already talking about sensor, let's talk about low light. And obviously, because the F6 has a full frame sensor, it is much better in low light. So you can use this camera up to ISO 25600, which is amazing. The Komodo isn't bad at all, especially for a red camera. You can use it up to ISO 3200, which I think is fairly great. But obviously you get 3 stumps more here in low light on the Z-Cam, which is pretty crazy good. So now let's maybe come to the biggest weakness of the Komodo, which is frame rate. So the Komodo is not a high frame rate camera. So for example, if we record in 6K full sensor readout, we get 40 FPS on the Komodo and 48 FPS on the F6. Not a big difference, and your normal slow motion will also look dreamy on 40 FPS. And if you want to record in 4K 6 story or even something above, the camera will crop in here a little bit, but obviously on the Komodo the crop is more tighter, so therefore I think it's better. And also you have much more options on the Z-Cam. You can shoot in 35 FPS, 36, 37, whatsoever, any number that you want to have the frame rate, the camera has you covered, whereas on the Red you have more the traditional like 24, 25, 30, 40 and in 4K 60. If we're talking about high frame rates, both cameras can record in 120 frames. The Komodo only does that in 2K and has a heavy crop, and I think it's not really useful. On the Z-Cam you can record in 4K 120 FPS in the CinemaScope mode, and also it's cropped by 1.3x crop, I believe. But anyway, really glad that we have that. And also we can record in full frame, in full HD, 120 FPS, which looks really nice, not much noisy, something like that, no artifacts. And you can even record in a Super 16 crop in full HD with 170 frames per second. So really great, all the options, and therefore I think the Z-Cam is the much better choice if frame rates are your concern. So now let's talk about the most important thing, and that's image quality followed by dynamic range. So you have seen the blind test, and many people, I asked you on Instagram, by the way, if you're not following me already, please do that, prefer the look of the Z-Cam by far actually. And it's really impressive because I think both cameras produce really nice images. However, I think the image on the Komodo is a little bit more filmic, a little bit more organic. Not to say that the Z-Cam is bad, but I think the Komodo has a slight advantage here. And also colors are really subjective, and the codecs are there to manipulate the footage however you want to. But if we talk straight about out of camera, here I used the Rec 709 RAW tab from the Red Raw with soft highlight roll-off, and here I used the Z-Log color plugin, and I just matched the white balance according to the color chart. We still have magenta shift on the Z-Cam in the mid-tones and also in the shadows, whereas here it looks a little bit more greenish. And overall, the skin tones look really more natural on the Komodo, I think, and also if you look to the sky and everything like that, the colors look more true to life in my opinion on the Komodo. So now let's talk about dynamic range. So please don't get mad when I say this camera is better than the other. So at the end of the day, both cameras are just tools, and from my own experience, both cameras are damn close, so it's almost indistinguishable which one has more than the other. So both of them are really close. But I have to say, I have to give a slight advantage to the Red Komodo, since the highlight roll-off each is much nicer, and we also have more detail in the shadows. And also if I exposed for something when I want to preserve shallow detail and overexpose, I had seen a slight advantage here on the Red Komodo. Not to say that the Z-Cam is bad, it's really close, and as I've said, in many situations, or even in a very hard dynamic range situation with a lot of contrast, both cameras handle them with ease. But by any means, I think the Komodo is a little bit better because you have more shadow detail, which is always like on the Z-Cam it's more distributed into the highlights, but also here we have a nicer highlight roll-off. So therefore I personally prefer the red. And also what I've seen in the footage is if we look at the sky in many images, even though both cameras weren't overexposed or something like that, I always had more color information in the red, so in the highlight, especially in the sky, it always looked blue and colorful, and here sometimes it just looked washed out and white. Don't know why. I can imagine that's because of 16-bit against 10-bit, so you have more color information, but if you know more about it, please let me know in the comments below. So now let's come to the final conclusion. Which one is the better camera? Well, that's really hard to answer, and it obviously depends on your needs and what clients and projects you are having. If we're talking about cost, the Z-Cam is much cheaper actually than the Komodo, and the question is the Komodo that much better, that it costs more? I think not. It's just a slight improvement. And overall, I think you should choose the Z-Cam if you are looking for a camera that is more practical. What I mean by that, if you boot that camera up, it's ready to shoot within 10 seconds. You don't need to black shade anything or something like that. You have a really nice outcoming image with high dynamic range on this camera, and really, great codecs on there, and also the low light performance is really impressive, so you don't need to bother yourself to if you don't have too much light, or if you're shooting in a low light scenario, this camera has you covered. However, if your only concern is maximum image quality with the best post-production workflow you can get, then obviously get the red. But it's not the most practical camera. What I mean by that is also the boot up time is like 30 seconds, so 3 times longer than on the Z-Cam. Also, if you're changing the file format from RAW to ProRes, you need to reboot the camera, which you don't need on the Z-Cam. And also once in a while you need to black shade the camera, which is a process that takes up like 5 minutes. And also if you have a color shift from inside to outside that's bigger than 10 degrees, you also need to and also when you're changing the frame rate, you also should basically calibrate your sensor, black shade your sensor. So therefore the red is much more cumbersome, but overall the final result looks a little bit better. But anyway, both cameras are really close, and I think you are getting great images with both of them. One advantage here on the Red is we have a face detect autofocus, which actually works quite well in most situations. It's not a tracking autofocus, but you can use a box like to draw around it. It will focus on that pretty accurately, I think, depending on the lens. On the Z-Cam is more like a contrast-based autofocus, like push the autofocus and it will hopefully focus on that. So therefore, I think Red Komodo is just a little bit better, but anyway, both cameras are really great. And I personally bought the Red Komodo at first, and then I was thinking, hey, okay, I need a second companion that I can use in situations where the Red is maybe not the best camera for, especially in low light. So here I have a camera that's perfect in low light, and I also like that both cameras are equal in terms of size and shape, and also that I can monitor them via live view when I have them on a drone or something like that. I have them on spaces where I can't see what I'm shooting. Really great that both cameras have that, so therefore I love them, and both are, from the image quality wise, it's just ever so slight difference. So please tell me in the comments below which camera did you prefer, and yeah, also what are your suggestions for future videos, what you want to see and something like that. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'm gonna see you in my very next video. Stay safe. Cheers guys.